Good afternoon, Mahesh.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, KK.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Excellent. At this point, I also welcome all the participants in today's show. And today we have Mahesh. Today's topic is realigning payments for the shift in consumer behavior. So it's going to be a very interesting topic. And I'm sure Mahesh, with all his experience and wisdom, will be able to give us a lot of knowledge and insight into the shift in the consumer behavior that we are expected to see. Welcome once again, Mahesh. And how's the world since we met last from an economic revival point of view?
I think, KK, it's a very good question. I think each country, if you look at US, it's fairly federated because a lot of the individual states are taking decisions in terms of their revival and get to work categories and how they will span out. UK, I think, is starting to get onto the revival program. I think they're still on lockdown, whereas if you look at some of the other geographies, and I've heard about France and Italy, all of them are starting to open up. That's interesting. Middle East, I recall, I was just speaking to someone very senior yesterday. I think they're starting the whole approach to how they can revive and how they can get back to work. I think that's very important. Yeah. But yes, down south, Australia has slowly started, and some of the Asian countries are beginning to look at relaxation by the end of the month. So which means that gradually, I would say everyone is following a similar footsteps like India. Someone who probably have gone into a lockdown earlier and have probably achieved good success in terms of flattening the curve are beginning to come out. Or they are also starting to get into a bit of understanding how to live with the circumstances and probably ramp up their entire medical facilities and medical fraternity to manage the outcome as what some people call it as wave 2.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think that's right. You know, we have to live, we have to learn to live with this epidemic, I guess, until we have the vaccine. So the COVID-19 Special Viewpoint Series, as you know, is a daily expert talk series. The series is our expression of solidarity with the banking and fintech industry. This is our way of showing that no matter how great the situation is, we will continue and we will fight the COVID-19 pandemic along with the rest of the world. So Mahesh, coming back to the talk on realigning payments for the shift in consumer behavior. In the last couple of years, payments are moving away from the confinements of shall I call it, a piece of hardware and a piece of card. They are moving to phones in the form of apps, and equally allowing businesses to sell anywhere using digital payment acceptance. It doesn't matter if you're in front of seller or store or bus, you're always using perhaps the mobile and the payment app. So COVID-19, as we all know, is bound to change consumer sentiment. This is a big epidemic, and it's bound to make a lot of impact across the globe. What will, according to you, will be the two significant changes in the consumer sentiment, and how it will affect their spending behavior?
Yeah, KK, I think it's a very relevant question in the current situation. So I would try to break it up into two phases. The phase one is the first impending 6 months. I think impending 6 months are going to be a fairly wait and watch by most of the folks. So it'll be split into two subcategories. Someone who will fight for survival because they will try and get themselves at least the two square meals a day, try and get into that situation. Someone who's better, some folks who are better off, they will try and conserve their money. They will not end up keeping, like I told last time, they will try and keep their spends to minimal. Let's do their basic living. Let's not overspend. Let's conserve. Let's stay healthy. So these are going to be the kind of outlook for medium, because Now, there are going to be people who will wait and watch to see how the economy is opening up, how the job scenario is changing, how is the entire as how are people going to start to go out to start to earn money. So there are going to be those questions and big things in mind, because everything around is taking a tumble, whether it's the stock market, whether it is the transport sector, the hotel sector, every sector is taking a tumble. So first 6 months is going to be a fairly wait and watch, conserve cash, conserve as much as you can, and live more in terms of a simplistic, minimalistic approach. So opening up will be the second two phases, will be in terms of from the 7th to, I would say, a broad spectrum between 12 to 18 months. That's the time when people will start to gauge in terms of how the stability of the economy is going to shape up. And it's going to be very interesting. When I say it's, these are big words, but it means different for different sections of the people. So folks who are today out of job, whether it is a daily servants, whether it is in terms of migrant laborers and all of them, they will have to come back, or they will start to do different jobs. So there will be shift in terms of what is going to be the focus around. A lot of people who've gone back to villages will prefer to do agriculture for the immediate rather than get back into a manufacturing kind of work. Whereas India as a economy, if you go back to the country will try and keep more and more manufacturing hubs in the kind of opportune moment, right? So it's going to be a bit of a dichotomy there. There are going to be people waiting and watching how the government is going to respond, how states are going to respond to it, how is the economy going to pick up. So there are going to be people in the 7 to 18 months will start to begin to spend depending upon their own source of income and their own stability of life. I think that's going to be the next wave. Once you do that, I think post 18 months is when I actually see the curve beginning to grow, in my view. Now, the growth curve will come in from the month 18. Why? Because you would have gone through the kind of recession. We would have gone through how to come out of it. Some learnings would have come in, and we would have starting to see the spends going beyond what's required for daily life. We would have begin to see what's really going to be good to have to buy, like I always call it. So when you look at those, my personal view is that for the economy to revive and get back, a lot of the dependency will be from the month 7 onwards to month 18, when spends will start to increase outside of the individual spends, and then 18 onwards is going to be interesting. So I would break it up into two subparts within the two broad categories. That's how I would call it.
Okay. So that's interesting, because you have actually broken it down into like some kind of long-term and short-term.
Yes.
Short-term being 6 months, we wait and watch, and survival. And so according to you, about 18 months is what you're looking, where things will start beginning to get normal. And in a way, this is such a pandemic that nothing is going to be a shortcut. Will take time. So Mahesh, we have various payment categories. Whether you call it the cards and wallets and ATMs accounts. How does this changing consumer behavior impact these categories? Do you see a major shift happening? And if they happen, what is the impact on the categories?
That's going to be a very lengthy answer from my side, because there are too many categories. But let's try and focus around what's critical for us, right?
Yes.
So if you look at, let's take what's the most important one that comes in is cash, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's start with where cash will be. So I would say the next 4 to 5 months, I think the usage of cash will take a hit, because people will be worried. People will be concerned whether they are going to contract the virus. There will be a section of people who will be very concerned, section of people who will not bother. But yes, the utilization of cash, the withdrawal of cash from ATMs, or withdrawal of cash from bank, or exchange of cash for any groceries and all those will start to take a hit. So you will say urban population trying to go digital Whereas as you get further into the rural sectors, I would say cash would continue to use, but the amount of usage will come down. What will happen as a follow through from there is the digital plays, and digital plays would be categorized into a few areas. One is in terms of cards, very popular now, whether it is in terms of the branded cards or whether it is in terms of rupees, and then a lot of these. I would say that usage of cards will begin to start increasing, and usage of cards will only increase if we start to deploy more and more endpoint terminals. Right now, I still believe we are fairly underpopulated in terms of our endpoint terminals. So, which means that there is some front ending that is required to get that, and which means, so you will see more and more players in the acquiring space. You will see more and more players being supported by incentives from the government. That's going to come because today government does not understand, probably is not in that space, but it will happen soon. You will require more access points for sure.
Yeah.
Now, which means cards will also emerge from being a chip and pin to emerging to become more contactless. So it is time. It will not be a dramatic change, but contactless cards will start to gain mainstream. And the value behind the contactless cards of what is allowed in the context of India has already started to improve. We were at 2, it has moved upwards. It will start to move upwards with some kind of security mechanisms built in. So which means contactless cards with a slightly morphed form in terms of contactless will start to gain traction. The next thing is going to digital, which is typically the mobile-based transactions. Mobile-based transactions have already seen some uplift. Leave alone, discount the fact that you have compression due to spends. But as we emerge out of this compression over the 7 to 8 months, you will see more and more transactions and more players coming in who will essentially be using the UPI framework or new frameworks coming in. I wouldn't be surprised if some new frameworks come in. Today, we haven't spoken about the Facebooks of the world, the WhatsApp of the world, all of them soon to be coming in with very different approaches. So I do see some changes starting to emerge on the digital spend, especially using the mobile. Then comes in terms of the e-commerce. Now, e-commerce is still fairly limited to urban areas and everything. So we still have tier 1, tier 2 cities using the e-commerce extensively. These transactions have not yet picked up rural because the spread of the internet, the connectivity, all that has a challenge. But I think that will start to change. We will see more adoption of the internet coming in. So you will see the internet and the e-commerce starting to pick up soon as people's spend pattern starts to change. People will not start to spend immediately, as I said, but when they change, they will start to use more of that. Then the last but not the least, which is an area which I always look for, is how do we bring innovation in cross-pollination across the physical and the digital, the fee digital, as I call it. That's going to be very interesting in my view, because where cash is not going to go away, mobile is there. How are you going to really use a mobile and the ATM to probably let people withdraw cash from the ATM? And there are some innovations that will start to emerge soon. There'll be innovations in the AAPS to use the retina eye-based scanning authentication. So you're going to see technology changing, technology put to better use. So to me, yes, each of them will have their own growth story. Cash will take the hit first, which will allow for digital to grow. All this will force any entity to start throwing more and more governance around the risk practices, because customers will start to see more fraud. Customers will start to have, when transactions do come in, there are going to be significant risks coming in. So banks who enable it, acquirers who enable it, will start to understand will start to look for how they have to manage the risk associated with it. So to me, patterns is not just about spend. Patterns is not about just about how the shift will happen, but it's also all about how anyone is going to provide these securely and within and non-repudiation, as we call it typically from an infosec language, how we are going to be able to make sure that that is completely secure and within a framework that is more adaptable to anyone. And the experience, customer experience, last but not the least, is a customer experience.
Yeah.
So you and when I say it, I'm just going to leave it at this: is not everyone has a smartphone, right? A lot of them are going to be on feature phone.
Feature phone.
So when you have feature phones, how are you going to enhance or make it more fungible to allow for all such transactions on the digital side to be used in the local language through a feature phone? So that's going to be interesting. I think these are the areas where a lot of small-time innovation is happening, but if one has to start focusing, there will be a lot more changes coming about in these areas. That's what I would see. And folks who really get onto that bandwagon faster are going to see transactions coming through. Even if you earn some small basis points, but as you start to increase the number of transactions, you will start to see the money flowing.
Yeah, thank you, Mahesh. So I think what you have brought about is the what Mahesh is talking, and I think there are many participants in this session who would perhaps paid a lot of attention. Cash is going to take a hit as per what he says, and digital is going to come through in the short period. And I think we have to reimagine once again our business, what we can do more in digital, so that until the entire thing happens. And I think one word Mahesh used is innovation. I think that's very, very important. I think we all have to reimagine our business. We have to come up with innovations. And I think participants in this session should note that carefully. So before I ask you the next question, let me once again invite participants to put your questions into the Q&A box. I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask Mahesh. You please put it in the Q&A box. The back office will enable us to put it across to him. And at some point, I will open up the session also for you to call and ask him directly. So my next question to you, Mahesh, is that we talked about the short-term plan, the long-term plan, and also the consumer behavior changing in various payment categories. I think no doubt they were very, very informative. But without doubt, there is a significant shift towards digital payments. I mean, I think we have seen that it's happening, right? How should the payment ecosystem respond to the shift in consumer behavior? We're talking about consumer behavior here.
So if you say consumer behavior, I think a lot of the payment ecosystem needs to understand the collaboration. So it's all going to be about what is going to drive acceptance, right? That's the first and foremost is going to be what's going to drive acceptance. The acceptance would mean how do you initiate transactions from the digital channels, whether it is in terms of your house computer, whether it's mobile, or whether it is some other devices, POS devices. So you are going to see more innovations coming in, and payment players like all of us would need to understand what the consumer behavior is going to change for. We're going to make some very drastic, I would say, collaborative effort in my opinion, because that's going to happen. You can't sit and innovate thinking that it will get accepted. You will have to do those agile approach, as I call it, in terms of rolling out something quickly, testing it out, changing it, again, getting back with what you best find to. You will also need to start collaborating with players who are on the front end side. Now, a lot of people build back end rails, a lot of people build acceptance rails, and a lot of people build the intermediary customer experience, mobile-based channel layers. So there will be a very interesting triaging that is going to emerge between three set of I would say players. Someone who does backend, he or she like an NPCI or forthcoming NUE, or for that matter, big aggregators. They will look at how they are going to innovate in terms of getting more transactions onto their platform or enabling more. The front-end players are going to be acquirers. They will try to see how they can spread their wings across various form factors and creating more merchant base for acceptance, and acceptance of different forms, whether it is QR code, whether it is non-frictionless based transactions. That's going to happen. The third category would be is players who are effectively going to play in between them with these two players, who are who are going to come to the table to say, how do I innovate using these capabilities? How do I create more frictionless, simpler transactions? How do I go to be collaborating with players on one side is in terms of the consumers and the other side in terms of the utility providers, or in terms of the spend, where the spend is the merchants. So I think you're going to have innovation across the value chain. And that's going to be very, very interesting to watch, space to watch, because in spite of all the lockdown, what I'm always hearing is everyone has gone back to the drawing board, and people are working on the drawing board to try and say, what can I simplify? How can I survive? And if I have to survive and make it simple, that's when the transactions start to come in. And it may pick up in the next 5 months, but as we come out, what is it that is going to change the game? What are some new thoughts that are going to come in, innovations that I keep calling out? And this is going to be a very interesting space to watch. And not everything is going to be the same form factor. You will see a lot more dramatic change happening. And 6 months to 7 months are going to see some test runs coming out, which is going to effectively start to make a game changer difference to the whole game.
Okay, that's I think you brought up a fantastic concept of the trigen, okay, and that's something that I think people will look at that. So you're saying that there is already a lot of collaborations happening between the back office and the front office. There are perhaps new products, new ideas coming to the fore, and there is significant shift that's happening from what has been our normal in these days' time. I think it's a thought-provoking thought of trigen, Mahesh, and thank you very much. So you did mention in the last question that I asked you is that about contactless payments. You spoke about that's something that you're going to see a significant increase in contactless payments. So which contactless payments methods are likely to witness a greater adoption?
So I would say that I would not go into the technical specifications. Now that is for folks who are going to make it work. I would say that even if you have simple, so I would probably bet myself around a few things. Wearables is going to be a very big one in the metro cities. I would say some huge shift happening on wearables. That is going to be the next big one that I see. I've always seen it as a very great option. People are going to get smarter, healthier. So to be able to have contactless payments onboarded onto your, say, watch and wearables is going to be interesting. So that's one change. Traditional card-based payments are going to be still available, but it's all about who's going to fund the entire recarding to make it more contactless. So that's going to be a very interesting story to emerge, because people have just moved to EMV, and moving away from EMV back into moving out additionally to a contactless environment may involve quite a bit of cost. So unless there is going to be stimulus, I would say, use the word, a broad category of some benefits given, I think there will be coming in a lot. There will be a lot of opportunity there. So
plus RBI.
Yeah, it's going to be RBI giving more incentives in such cases to the card manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
I don't want it being given. So at the end of the day, if contactless card is going to be in the 30s today, can you dump it down to about 15, 16 bucks, right? Because there are going to be some duty waivers, there are going to be. So the moment you bring that barrier down, what's going to do? It's going to drive more issuance. The moment you have issuance, there will be pressure to have acceptance. And if RBI and the government is going to not interfere in some of these, but is going to facilitate, I would say that you will suddenly see a lot of players jumping into this. And the moment you get into those kind of situations, those kind of scenarios, you will see much more broader category of acceptance coming out. I also believe that a lot of the ATM OEMs are going to start looking at how they're going to look at innovation at the ATMs, right? People in the short run may not want to touch the screen, touch the FDKs and everything. So it is all going to be a collaboration using contactless at the ATM instead of a card reader, how it's going to work. So there are going to be some very interesting changes that are going to emerge very soon, which is going to be a combination of cardless readers, contactless readers combined with your mobile app. So I can see some very innovative use cases coming up, which will get accepted as people get to the ATM to withdraw cash. So I would say that you will see more on the contactless cards, mobile-based transactions with virtual cards coming in. And more importantly, on-demand, you're going to see more on-demand capabilities coming through. So for example, if someone loses a card, how do I get a new card issued straight onto the mobile app and facilitate the transaction? So there are going to be some very interesting use cases and possibly cases like how you have Samsung Pay and Apple Pay. In India, the Apple and Samsung Pay have not been very successful much. Yeah. But I think those are areas which will start to gain steam now.
True. So you mentioned about wearables as according to you as one of the key things that you're going to watch how interestingly it goes. So I have a query for you on the health sector. Because of this pandemic, I'm sure there's going to be a tremendous demand on health sector services. So do you foresee anything happening out there, sir?
Well, you see, health sector in India isn't using it very well. But if you look at some of and we've been party to some of the enablement that we have done. So if you have an iPhone, and the moment you are given an iPhone with an app integrated, your health insurer knows how well your sugar is under control, how your BP is under control, because all of the data gets monitored with the app. And if you're doing well, they give you better on premiums, right? So they give you loyalty points, which you can redeem in very different ways, right? You've enabled some of those very innovative use cases. And it was very interesting in the way the insurance sector sees it, because for them, at the end of the day, how they measure and how they are effectively going to spend the monies associated, spend the loyalty points is very interesting. Yeah. We've also seen some of when you have wearables and you are going on, say, we did do a trial run for some of the recently, we were looking at some trial runs for pilgrimage, where people go on this, and it's very effective. So you're going to see some very interesting changes where the wearables are going to become the fulcrum point of tracking your body activity, tracking your health, which effectively is getting linked to your mobile, and hence transmitting data to a lot more of people who start to control you, who start to understand how your behavior is. So which means that your ability an individual's ability to control the diet, health, spend, everything will start going in, and wearables is only becoming a tool to get that done. Okay. Because again, you don't touch anything, right? If you look at wearable, you're really not touching anything. It's still connected to your mobile, but you could use your watch, and you can have a Bluetooth enabled, and you can connect it up, and you can pay off. You just don't need to wait anywhere. You don't even need to remove your card, right? Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. So these are some changes that I see collaboration happening with a lot of the wearables players. I know there's some very interesting use cases that we at FIS have already done. So it's going to be interesting and it's not just us, leave alone FIS. There's going to be so many people already in the game plan there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. So once again, participants, we're open for your questions. Please do send as early as possible so that we don't run out of time and we are unable to put your questions to Mahesh. So Mahesh, going ahead, we just spoke about consumers' concern about safety online and offline, and one of the concern would be to at any touch point, that will be a concern. I mean, today, even if you are going with the elevator, we are concerned that I'm going to, I'm going to press this, floor or the story number, and so we are concerned about touching anything. Correct. How will the entities in the ecosystem respond to challenges kind of posed by the increasing frauds that may happen because of more and more digital being adopted?
So one is, as I said, the issuers of all of such tools, or I would say digital tools, will be under increased pressure to make sure that they are covering for the risk. So today, lot of the issuers do not really, issuers and acquirers, I would say, do not really look at the digital risk involved. I would say that's going to change. Coupled with the innovation, the ask would be that how do I make every transaction secure? It will also be slightly different. Any transaction beyond a threshold, people will accept the risk and not do the innovation. So it's going to be very interesting. You're going to have it both ways. It's going to be a bit of a dichotomy there. So if someone who's if you're going to say an acceptable risk to any bank or an issuer is going to be $500, they will say, just leave it. Don't bother about it. Just move on in life. Don't bother. But anything which is going more, how do I do more easier step-up authentication, as we call it? How is that authentication going to be less frictionless? How do I make it work? I think these are some things which will start to emerge. So which means that I would say that people's usage of understanding of the technology, understanding of the ease of use, and the understanding of usage of technology is going to be a very interesting combination. That's going to happen. But whatever we are talking is not just going to be applicable for 20% of the population. It has to be for the masses. And when you look at the masses, it has to be how they are able to use this more pragmatically within their own current lifestyle. That's going to be the challenge today. If at all someone has to do the innovation, it is all about enabling that sector to come into the digital play. And I know, like I read it somewhere, it's called the fee digital, which is essentially a combination of physical and digital. And where does it really start blurring the boundaries? So that's going to be a big area where you will also need to make sure that the risk associated with it is managed effectively. We've heard so many cases of people not knowing how to share, not to use an e-commerce transaction. They share their PIN, they share so many things, and frauds happen, and then they come back and do a chargeback claim, and then it goes into disputes. So to me, how we're going to be more well organized in those ways and support is going to be interesting. So I would say that it's a learning curve as we start the adoption, a learning curve from the user experience perspective, and a big learning curve from the people who are supplying the technology to make it more risk managed, to manage the risk. So that's going to be very interesting. So you will see increased spend, not just in technology, but also in risk management. So that's going to be very. So if I look at RBI, I will only ask them to focus very extensively on how does every bank really understand the risk, and what is their practices to support innovation at the cost of where they will draw the line. So it's going to be interesting. Those are some discussions which I do see happening across the banking and the fintech sector soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh. I think you have brought to the fore. While we all know that the digital spend will definitely increase, there will be a lot more digital channels opening up. But I think you also brought to the fore one very interesting aspect, that they will be spent also on risk management. I think that's
Absolutely
important. Yeah, that's excellent. So Mahesh, we have the first question, and like I told you before, we also have viewers from other social media channels. So YouTube is also one of the media channels. People are watching you. So one of the questions I have is on the virtual card. We spoke about plastic card. We spoke about wearables. But these are all from a cost point of view, pretty high, or it will be considerably high for an easy adoption. So the question is, instead of using plastic, and can we use a virtual card?
Yeah, we can. I'm saying today, virtual card is still getting embedded inside an app in a mobile, and we still support it for a lot of the wallet players. So it's going to be there. I'm saying yes, a virtual card is going to be there. We've had some safety concern in terms of in the usage of virtual card. So, and it all goes back to, I circle back to my favorite topic of managing risks. So virtual card to me is absolute. It will be there. I think it's a great form of utilization. I think where I think issuers would need to look at is, do they have opportunity to create kind of a small ticket, prepaid virtual cards where people can top up on need and can use that for transactions, such that the exposure is fairly limited and can be managed. So these are going to be some, we could have all those technologies built out of what is existing today in the market. So it's going to be some changes there. So the short answer to your question is yes, virtual card is feasible. The only guidance I would give is to make sure that when you use virtual card, just make sure that the framework associated with governing the risk has to be fairly well articulated and practiced.
Yeah, thanks. The second question is I think, interesting one, something which I love on cyber security. And I think, Mahesh has answered that question, saying that risk management involves, I guess it involves the cyber security also. So that will also will be a focus area. But to get your comments on that, Mahesh, what about cyber security as a area that will be on the rise?
Oh yeah, now you've already seen some very, very large players subject to ransomware attacks, right? The early stage ransomware attacks. We've seen some very large corporations back in the US getting caught up in this. Probably in India, I'm sure there are going to be quite a few which will start to emerge. So as we move into work from home or make more digital, you will see an increased cyber attacks coming through. So which is where I say that everyone needs to be aware of it. People need to be looking at who are the best players in the market to support their cybersecurity. I think it's very important at the end of the day to make sure that we don't compromise on that. It may create a second or two overheads, but in terms of being able to not compromise is going to be very critical. So yes, so you will have cybersecurity risk management combined going to be, so I call it as RISC instead of RISK. So it's about risk, information security, and compliance. So the combination of these four, which is going to be for any business, I would call it as my business assurance pillars. These business assurance pillars would play a very important part as innovation comes in on the front end and on the front end. That's my take on it. So it's a combo. It's a combination effort. It can never be in its isolation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mahesh. I think that word you used of risk with C and not K, I think that's an important. I think it's a lot of there's lots of thoughts can go into that. I have one more question for you from YouTube. He says he is giving a very good note. He says COVID is a temporary phenomenon. Thank you very much for saying that. Because we don't know how long it's going to last. So it's a temporary phenomenon. He says, do you see cash usage actually going up post COVID-19? That's a contrary question he's asking.
Yes. So now, will cash go up? The answer is 6 months, no. But after 6 months, if you do a like-to-like usage, it will come back. It will come back to do it. No, we thought after, we thought when demo happened, you saw a serious surge happening. But over a 24-month period, it had come back to its previous levels. Will it happen here? Yes, I do see it happening. What I do see it happening is the ticket size will come down. So the per transaction ticket size, as we call it in our parlance, I think that will come down significantly. If someone is making 4 trips to an ATM to withdraw, say, 4,000 rupees, 1,000 rupees each, they may end up withdrawing, say, 2,000 rupees at one go. Or in two tranches, they may withdraw rather than 4 tranches. So will the ATM, the overall cash circulation, it will come down by about 10-15%. Will it disappear? I think not yet. Because for a large economy like ours, where still 70% of the population is still not yet fully adopted to the digital, I would say it will take at least another 3-4 years for it to be there. So it's alive. If you say it's alive, going to be there for the next 3-4 years, it will come back to at least 60-70% of where it was before. And eventually, I would say about in 8 to 9 years, I would see starting to take a dip, because you have huge amount of infrastructure that needs to be built out to make it digital. So we are still far away from it. So I would say that it's a mammoth exercise that needs to, because we can't just track it by what's happening in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. That is not in any way a benchmark to our success. The benchmark to our success will be when it gets penetrated at the grassroots level. And they are still not there. So it's going to be some task away.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So, recently we had a lot of NRIs coming back from wherever they were working. And, India has been receiving a lot of currencies, a lot of foreign exchanges. And I think our remittances into India have been close to around 79 billion or so, I read in somewhere in the year 2018. But with all the Indian expats coming back to India, would we see that remittances in India expected to drop? Will this be an economic setback for us?
See, I would say it will be a temporary setback for sure. When I say temporary, similar to COVID, a lot of these things will be about 12 to 18 months, it will be a setback for sure. Coming to 2021, yes, it will be a setback because people don't have work. People can't earn abroad to be able to transfer money to their families back home. So those things will take a temporary hit. I would say it will change. It has to change because not India, while India's growth and India's, I would say, slogan from the government is to make in India, buy in India, and everything is fantastic. I think we will still have a large population starting to go back. So this is obviously going to be cyclical. So next 12-14 months, it will take a hit. After that, will it come back to where it is? Yes, it will take 24 months for it to come back. It's not going to be that easy.
True, absolutely.
So because if you see now, KK sir, if you look at the kind of migrant population who have come back,
yes,
it is a micro fraction of the number of people who are abroad, right?
Yeah.
So it is only because they don't have jobs, they can't survive. A lot of people took that path to come back to survive. So will they go back? Yes. As economy revives, there will be a beeline to go back to where they were.
True. And that's true also for the local migrants, because a large part of the local payments, remittances, used to be the local migrants who were, working in different parts of India. I read somewhere Paytm used to have a monthly remittance of almost 5,000 crores as per the CEO. And that's also going to take a dip, just like the NRI. I think that's also going to take a hit as the migrants go back to the villages. Right?
Yeah, it will. But within India, I would say that changes will be faster. That acceptance because people will go back. But this time when they go back, they're going to be a bit more careful. So it's going to be, in my mind, it is just because when migrant laborers are there, they were not really taken care of. That's the unfortunate situation we are all in.
Okay.
But yes, I think it will. I'm saying it's a temporary phenomena to me. It will come back to where it was in another 18-24 months.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, participants, send your questions across. If somebody wants to ask a question directly to Mahesh, you know the rules. Just put up your hand. The back office will enable you to ask the question directly. So going to the next question, Mahesh, COVID-19 will induce a habit of savings among consumers. I think that's happening, right? We are not spending at all. other than what we used to, whatever is required for our day-to-day consumption. And that saving is actually kicked in. What should payment ecosystem players to make economics of payments favorable? Is the question.
So I would say, see, end of the day, when you say, just repeat the question so that I'm being very clear.
Sure. So let me read the question once again. COVID-19
Yeah.
will induce a habit of savings among consumers. What should payment ecosystem players, I think here's Mr. Word, I think what should payment ecosystem players do to make economics of payments favorable?
So I think it's important to, at the end of the day, it is very, Vivek has asked a very interesting question. So I would say that I'll first challenge what kind of savings are being induced. Today's savings is more to make sure that people they don't know where their life is heading for at this moment. So obviously they're trying to protect themselves first. So what payment systems should really do is, I think they should start collaborating with meaningful collaboration, I would say, in terms of if someone can get across to say every of these households, say the top, so not the guys who have lakhs of cash, but someone who's in the media category, in terms of saying, hey, can I help manage your spends better? Now, someone is going to be help manage that spends better, and also say throw in a certain innovation there in terms of saying you're spending on this pattern quite often. Can you look at this to spend so that it reduces your cost by 20 rupees or 30 rupees? I think that's the kind of innovation that one will need to bring in. So which means collaboration with a lot of the, I would say, aggregation players, especially on the, I would say, utility side, on the daily needs side and everything. The second part will be in terms of collaborating on the credit side. So which means a lot of the people will now be micro credits, will be a big name of the big game in this game changer soon. Not many people will be soon eligible for credits, good credit scores and everything. But if the payment players are going to work with a lot of the NBFCs, a lot of those players who really extend micro credits, then I do see certain small ticket credits taking off, very small ticket credits taking off. So that's going to be, it's like pay now, buy now, pay later kind of a situation which will emerge. I would see some emerging there. So these are some couple of options that come in my mind that I would say payments players need to start innovating. So for example, if I'm spending, say, in a month, if I'm spending 6,000 rupees on a lot of my subscriptions that I subscribe to, now unintentionally, intentionally, but if there is someone who's looking at all my debits and saying, you subscribe to this one channel and he or that channel will give you all what you get at 80%, I would rather say, hey, that guy has done a fantastic job. Why don't I always pay through this person? So that's going to be very interesting, Secondly is, buy now, pay later. Now, someone who's out of a job for 3-4 months for whatever it is, but he has a great credit history. Is there an opportunity to extend him, say, 20,000, 30,000 loan to tide over a crisis, and see that you have the right rights. I wouldn't say always collaterals, but you will have some kind of back-end capabilities to take the money back. So you are going to see some of those opportunities emerging very well. I've already seen a lot of NBFC players jumping into this category. Now, there's challenge for liquidity, but is there an opportunity there? I would see a lot of opportunities there. So that's where payment players like us, who can bring in technology, can really get into the front.
Yeah, I think what you say about small credits, I think that's even I feel that's what's going to pick up. And you did mention about small credits with installment payments, etc. I'm going to put up these kind of questions to the next subject matter expert who will come from microfinance. So I'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the questions that has come to come forth is that what's your view for policy reforms in payment systems to increase digital adoption?
See, policy reforms, in my mind, has to be in terms of, I don't think they should have cash payouts or anything, but it should be more in terms of subsidies, in terms of tax cuts, in terms of, I would say, when I say excise cuts and all those customs duty cuts, when you import some technologies to which enables digital payments. For example, I was talking about point of sales, right? MPOS terminals. When you talk about your I would say contactless cards, when you talk about certain other capabilities that you're engaging on the ATM side. I think as long as government can cut certain certain taxes associated with it, get into some deep opportunity there, I would say that will buy, and they don't get into a lot of the definition of how you are going to control MDRs and everything. I don't think that should happen, because that's not in the government's business. If people who are successful will find innovation coming in the front end, you should not kill that. But if these are the couple of areas that you start to play in, government's role should be in creating policy to boost and not controlling the transaction side. So then I think there'll be easier and faster adoption. There'll be more players jumping into the bandwagon. Otherwise, people are hesitant. Today, why people are not coming in the front end? They have no, there are no business models, right? The business models are predicated on certain scale, certain value of the transaction coming into their pocket. If that's not coming in, then why will someone invest?
True. Yeah. So going back to the customer experience, do you have any case which you can talk, which illustrate the enhancement in customer experience pertaining to payments? Anything that comes to your mind we can talk about?
So I'll tell you a very classic example. Now, we were a classic case we have done in. We've done this thing for a couple of large companies who have multiple interests, right? Where the front-end digital payments, right from a store checkout, right, to, so it comes to such a way that when you are entering a store, right,
yeah,
you automatically, your data is picked up in terms of XYZ is entered the store because your NFC is on. The moment your NFC is on, your data is already picked up. Now, as you go and start to pick out goods from the shelf, and you start to put it into your basket, you are already beginning to start getting ticketed, right? Your entire bill starts to get generated.
Yeah.
Now, when you come into the self-checkouts status, you don't even waste more than about 5 minutes, because all you do is you can say, I need this bill. Your bill will come, you can check, and you can say, okay, I pay. And you don't need to even show anything, you just walk, because your payment is automatically taken care. So some of these innovation, and this happens not just in a store, by the way, it happens even in a pump. You go in, it's only in India, you have an attendant trying to fill your tank.
Yes.
Go abroad, you don't even have that, right? You just
Absolutely.
go in, your NFC is open, you open up, you fill your tank, you shut the tank and move on. Rest everything is auto-debited. So we've done some very good innovations in that space. I think there is going to be some wave of such innovations getting adopted in tier 1 cities to begin with, and slowly but steadily getting into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. You're going to see that. So that's a set of innovation that I believe will be fairly accepted. Because if you look at it today, if you look at DMart, right?
Yeah.
You go to any of the DMart store, they're crowded. Probably most of the hours of the day, they're crowded, especially over the weekend. But if you are not going to stand in that crowd, all you're going to do is you're going to be probably being able to check out by yourself or self-checkout even without that. Without even opening up your mobile, you're just going to disappear from there and it's getting auto-debited and the bill comes out to you. Why not? then those are some, because you're not touching anything. So it's going to be very interesting. And these are technologies that are nothing new. It's already available. Barcode is there, a lot of protection is there. So it's going to be interesting in terms of how you're going to be getting all this into adoption within the India framework.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mahesh. Okay, we have a question. Yeah, we have a question to you from Mani. He says the BEC has crashed. As you know, it's almost below 30,000. Now that's, according to him, now that's what happens when the spending doesn't happen in travel, hospitality, and tourism industry, and these savings go to capital markets. How do you improve payments unless the avenues of spending is not available?
Yeah, avenues of spending is available only when the economy is starting now. So first and foremost, I think the whole opportunity has to be that people have to get back into their livelihoods. So today their livelihoods are not there. Now, leave alone a bulk of us, which is still form 10-15%. So that livelihood to kickstart is what I believe our finance ministers and everyone has looking at stimulus. In my opinion, I would say that once the livelihood start, that whole chain of cycle will start. Today, it is not starting. Today, people are still hesitating. So in my opinion, it's a vicious cycle where there is no money to start. Then when they start, then people don't know whether they can consume it and whether they have the money to buy. And once they have the money to buy, so that whole cycle will take at least 12 months to come back. So in my opinion, it's just that you are going to have erosion, significant erosion coming in. So today all bank stocks have got hit. Very clearly, there is an issue in something which has not gone right.
Yeah. True. Okay. Thanks, Mahesh, for that. I did ask you a question on the consumer sentiment, and could you just touch upon how things will change in the spending behavior in post-COVID? Do you see a significant change in the spending behavior?
In my opinion, when you say spending behavior is 6 months now, 6 months is going to be very cautious, extremely cautious. Post 6 months, depending upon how the economy is starting to restart itself, you're going to look at better spends. People will start to go out and spend more, right? And people will start to. So people will start spending when there is assurance, and there are two kinds of assurance. One assurance is that you are behind the curve in terms of, even if you do get this virus, you are going to be you're not going to be ending up in bad shape. You're going to be ending up, you know how to manage it and come out of it. Two is, they are also going to say, do they have a job or do they have a sustenance model first? So can they afford to spend beyond their daily needs? So all this will take, in my mind, about 7 to 8 months. So which means after that, you will see people starting to spend on their beyond necessities. That's what I would see.
Okay, thank you. So Mahesh, I think we've spent a lot of time, almost an hour now. It's coming to 4 o'clock. I think a lot of thought-provoking subjects we touched upon. I like that the recovery you said. It's a short-term, medium-term, and a long-term plan. You talked about Trigen, and I think there's a lot of things to think about that. Also, the excitement thought of variables being a factor or a channel for payments is, I think, going to be in the fore, because you don't want to really touch anything in the post-COVID era. So I think we touched upon a lot of different subjects. I thank you once again, Mahesh, for coming, spending your time, spending 1 hour with us. And this war against COVID is going to go on. We're going to fight it together. Together we will fight this war, and I'm sure we will succeed. Jai Hind, and thank you very much once again, Mahesh, for coming.
Thank you, KK and team. Thank you. Muddy. Much appreciate this opportunity, and thank you, Vivek.
Thanks.